There are a few places around the world that have a national booze. It's kind of like a national anthem, but you can get sauced from it, which is typically the state you're in when you're singing a national anthem anyway. Many of the most popular spirits are synonymous with their respective countries. Russia has vodka, Mexico tequila, America has, well, anything that's cheap or on sale. And Brazil has cachaça. So today I'm going cha-cha with cachaça. What is it? How is it made? What's it taste like? And how to drink it? But before I jump in, and if you're feeling fancy, be sure to subscribe to Come to Cheesus. Cheesus will bless you for this, and let me know in the comments what other liquors you would like to hear more about. Ok, tudo bem? Muito prazer. Cachaça sounds like a Mortal Kombat character.
Cachaça wins. Fatality.
But the refreshing spirit from South America's largest country is closer to rum, with a light coloration ranging from clear to gold, depending on how much is added by the distiller, although most cachaça is clear. And similar to rum, it's made by distilling fermented cane sugar. Cachaça can be enjoyed straight, which was how it was primarily consumed in the early days of its existence. But it is also the key to the Caipirhina, a cool mixture of cachaça, lime, sugar, and ice. Sort of like a daiquiri, but if it tasted good. Cachaça is very rum adjacent, so adjacent in fact that it's frequently referred to as Brazilian rum. Despite the drink's status as a point of Brazilian pride, the first round of cachaça actually wasn't brewed in Brazil. Cachaça was first manufactured in the early 1500s by slaves in São Vicente, an island off the northern coast of Africa that was initially established as a Portuguese colony where they grew sugar. But where rum is typically distilled from molasses, a thick syrupy substance produced by boiling sugarcane, cachaça is distilled directly from sugarcane juice. Yeast is added to the juice extracted from the freshly cut sugarcane, and the resultant mixture is then distilled in a copper pot and aged in wooden barrels for at least a year, which is mandated by law. Similar to other spirits, the wood of the barrels assists in the process by reducing the spirit's acidity. The resultant booze can be enjoyed straight or in a cocktail. I'll get into some of the cocktails in a bit. Sugar-based boozes were more prevalent in this area of the world at the time because the sugar industry was expanding in a crazy huge way. Both Spain and Portugal operated the first sugar plantations in Brazil beginning in the 1500s, and then for over 100 years, the country was the single largest producer of sugar in the entire world. That's a pretty good monopoly. Brazil's dominance in the sugar trade eventually led to sugar becoming the cash crop of the Caribbean. Because importing booze from Europe was incredibly expensive thanks to taxes, the colonists decided to use all their extra sugar that was lying around to make some boozy booze. And since cachaça is distilled from pure sugarcane rather than something like molasses, which itself takes time to make, it was quicker and easier to produce than rum. Plus, fresh sugarcane juice has an extremely short shelf life, so you pretty much have to have it immediately. Might as well make some shots. I wonder how that sounds in Portuguese. But cachaça didn't take off the way that rum did. Brazil was a very difficult country to reach. It was a brutally long trip, and any boat sailing from Europe had to make the 600-mile leg of the journey through a stretch of ocean that experienced very little wind. And it's not like they could just fire up the outboard motor. So as the demand for sugar increased, Europeans started thinking about maybe moving sugar production somewhere that was less of a hassle. That somewhere was Barbados, and by the 1600s, both the sugar-making process and the distilling process had advanced enough that using molasses, which was initially considered a byproduct of the sugar-making process, became the standard in the Caribbean. Rum became part of the sailors' rations in the British Navy, and the rest is pirate history. Meanwhile, cachaça stayed pretty much isolated to Brazil and Western Europe. However, its breezy reputation as a tropical refreshment disguises a pretty ugly history. The straight no chaser approach to drinking cachaça dates back to its history as a beverage for slaves. Brazil was a major player in the transatlantic slave trade. In fact, over half of the people taken from Africa and sold into slavery were taken to Brazil. Slaves on Portuguese and Brazilian plantations were given daily rations of cachaça through the 16th and 17th centuries because the alcohol and the sugar would allow them to work longer. giving them more energy and diluting any fatigue or pain. It was even considered a drink of basic foodstuffs for slaves by at least one Brazilian governor while arguing against its restriction in 1780. When the slave trade was abolished in Brazil in 1830, people in Brazil got around it in part by trading goods for enslaved people, most notably cachaça. The drink even gets its name from the word enslaved Africans used to describe the foam that would collect at the top of a pot of boiling sugarcane, which they would collect and let ferment. Despite originating in Portugal, cachaça really took off in Brazil. The drink became so popular that Portugal actually banned it out of sheer pettiness on June 12, 1744, a date that is now recognized as National Cachaça Day in Brazil. So, depending on when you're watching this, saúde. The ban only made cachaça a point of national pride, and it steadily grew more popular as a beverage and an export until Brazil finally declared its independence from Portugal in 1822. In other words, the drink was so good that it changed international borders. Today, cachaça remains extremely popular, although not as well known as its rummy cousin, due in part to the fact that there wasn't much trade of cachaça apart from the back and forth between Europe and Brazil. It is still produced roughly the same way, much like the Benedictine monks who have used the same process to brew regional spirits such as champagne or chartreuse for hundreds of years. And like those spirits, it's actually illegal to produce cachaça outside of its home nation. Cachaça's Brazilian heritage is an inextricable part of its identity. And the rules are pretty strict inside of Brazil too. Cachaça can only legally be produced with sugarcane grown in one of the 23 spots in the country. Being a citizen alone doesn't give you brewing rights, so don't tear up your passport just yet. Cachaça is a lucrative business and it's only getting more popular. Due in part of eased restrictions between the US and Brazil beginning in 2012, cachaça sales went from 6,000 cases in 2005 to nearly 100,000 cases in 2015. And that's just in the booze-hungry US of A. If you've never tried it before, you probably guessed it by now that it tastes a little bit like rum, but really not like the kind Captain Jack Sparrow would normally drink, although he probably wouldn't refuse a glass if it came his way. While rum tends to be sweeter and heavier because of the molasses, with a higher alcohol per volume, cachaça is lighter and grassier. But it is still sweet though, it is after all made from pure sugarcane. And where rum has a bit of spice to it, cachaça is fruitier. Basically, cachaça is you at the beginning of the night, and rum is you after a few drinks in. There are several variations of cachaça, depending on the type of wood used during the aging process. Branca, or white cachaça, is made by aging the spirit in stainless steel containers, or in barrels made of wood that don't add any coloration. This form of cachaça is also called traditional. Tradicional, classic, clássica, or silver or prata. But if you like to get a little funky with your spirits, cachaça also comes in yellow. Yellow cachaça, also called amarelo cachaça, is aged in wooden barrels that add a golden hue. That's why it's sometimes called oro or gold cachaça. The type of wood used to age the spirit can also have an effect on its acidity and aroma, allowing for either further specialization for when you're trying to get drunk on an itinerary. Also, even though all cachaças are aged, there's a specific distinction between regular or stored cachaça and aged cachaça. And remember, this is by order of Brazilian law. Aged cachaça must be kept in barrels of up to 700 liters or 185 gallons, the size of a really impressive aquarium. Man, those fish must be toasted. Meanwhile, non-aged cachaça in the springtime of its youth can be kept in barrels of any size for an unspecified length of time. As I mentioned earlier, cachaça is typically consumed neat, particularly by older generations of Brazilians, or most commonly muddled into a Caipirhina. Most likely invented in the late 19th century either as a medicinal elixir or more likely a new way to sell that sugar everyone was making, the cocktail is created by muddling lime juice and sugar into a glass, then stirring in ice and cachaça. Let's make one together. So, if you have 3 ingredients and 3 minutes, you can take a quick trip to Brazil with me. Making a caipirinha is pretty easy. I'm not a bartender, but I like to drink. So you just really need 3 things. You need cachaça, you need some limes, you need some sugar, and you need another caipirinha to make one, because Helps to drink while you're making stuff. Basically, you get your limes, cut them into about 6 to 8 pieces, throw them in there, and you get about a tablespoon of sugar. Might go a little extra. The whole thing's made of sugar, so what's the big deal if you go over? And then once you get that in, you want to do a little muddling. So it's just nice and gentle. You're just trying to get some of these juices out and get them mixed in with the sugar. And then after that, you want to add your ice. That looks good, but you know what? You can stir it, but I prefer to shake it. And there we are. You can garnish it with a little bit of lime if you want, but that is a good looking drink right there. Ooh, I feel like I'm on the beaches of Copacabana. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I've got a friend. Oh, hello. Fair warning, these are incredibly easy to drink and pretty strong at the same time. Caipirinhas can have a spectrum of other fruits added. Passion fruit, kiwi, strawberry, and if you're in Brazil, there's a whole host of local fruits they use. My personal favorite is the caipirinha served with ginger. While I almost completely associate the caipirinha as something you would drink during the day, the ginger version gives me a nighttime vibe. So if you start your party early, you can keep it going. And then there's the aged cachaça, which is like if whiskey and rum had a baby. Forget about your rum drinks, cachaça is the real drink of paradise. So what do you think? Have you tried cachaça or had a caipirinha? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're at it, check out some of my other videos on Come to Cheesus.